There are actually a lot of options to further enhance your text or images in VideoScribe. In this video, we'll cover the text and image properties windows that let you add drop shadows to your text, change the type of hand that draws the element, change how long to wait before transitioning to the next object, and so much more. We'll quickly go through the menu since it's way faster and easier for you to just experiment on your own. But I can at least throw in some tips here and there about how to make use of these effects. Let's start with the text properties window. To get to your properties window, click on the text that you want to edit from the canvas or the timeline, and click on its document looking icon in the timeline. You can also get to the properties menu by double-clicking on the object directly on the canvas. Okay, so this is the text properties window. It looks confusing, but it'll make sense in a bit. At the top of this window, you can choose to change the hand drawing effect and instead have a hand move in the text onto the canvas. It's a good way to give your project a little variety, and it's available for both text and image objects. I tend to use it when I want to bring a JPEG or PNG image into my project. You can choose which direction the hand starts from, and even give it a bounce or have it go too far before placing the text. You can preview the effect by clicking on the play button on the preview. The Draw Only Strokes checkbox mostly has to do with images and making it look drawn by only using the stroke data from the file. It's on by default, so we'll just leave it alone. Draw Backwards sets the drawing animation in reverse. You can change the spacing between each letter with the gap plus and minus buttons. This is especially useful if the font that you imported doesn't look like how you want it to look. In the next row, you can change the text opacity, which means that you can make it see-through. You can also change the text alignment if you have multiple rows of text and change its rotation. Next, you can quickly change the text color by clicking on the colored rectangle at the bottom of the preview. If you want to change the actual text or its font, you just click on the T icon to go back to the text editor. The section at the bottom of the properties window is pretty important. This shows you exactly how long it will take before the next object starts its effects. Animate is the same as draw time. This changes the speed of the drawing animation and how fast the hand moves in your object when using the move in effect. Pause is simply the amount of time to wait before moving on to your next object. This is useful when you're trying to time your project to a voiceover so you can show a section longer while the voiceover catches up. Or you can use it to give the viewer some time to look at your scene or read the text before moving on to the next section. Transition affects how long it takes in between this object and the next object. If you put in a long transition after you move the camera to another part of the canvas, it will move the camera and wait until the designated transition length passes before starting the next object. I haven't really found a need for extending the transition time past 1 second, but I often set it to 0 when I want fluid, fast-paced transitions between objects. Moving on to the icons at the bottom of the text properties window, we already know that the first icon is used to change the text, font, and color. The second icon lets you add effects like a blur or colored glow around your object. You can also add a drop shadow, inner shadow, or bevel to give your object more depth. I don't use those effects too often since it's supposed to look written, but I would probably use the drop shadow and bevel for titles. The hand icon lets you change the hand that is used specifically for this object. If you want to change the default hand for your entire project, you would click on the circled hand icon from the main project window. If you change a hand through the properties window, the hand that you set for that object will not be affected by changing the default hand on the main project window. They actually have a wide variety of hand types to choose from, so you should be able to find one that matches the feel of your project. One of my favorite hands is actually the no hand option. I think it looks pretty cool to have an object draw itself onto the screen. While this may sound obvious, I see this so often in VideoScribe videos that I need to mention it. use the appropriate hand for each element in your video. For example, if you're drawing an image that has no stroke, switch to a paintbrush hand. Or if you're using the scribble out effect, which is VideoScribe's eraser effect, change the hand to an eraser hand. The recent update to VideoScribe gives us access to many different variations of a person's hand. This means that you have different hands in the same style for multiple situations that might come up in your project. It baffles me why VideoScribe set the default hand for every new project to a hand style that doesn't have any other related hands. There's no eraser or paintbrush version, just the Sharpie hand. If you take anything away from this video, please let it be this. Remember to change your default hand to one of the hand collections. That way, if you use different types of elements, you have a wide variety of hands to choose from, all in the same style. Consistency is so important. We don't want people bashing our videos because the hand suddenly changes to a completely different person's hand when erasing something on the canvas. That covers the text properties window. Make sure that you save your changes by clicking on the checkmark icon, or you can delete the object altogether by clicking on the trash can icon. The image properties window is pretty much the same as the text properties window except for a couple of options. Instead of text spacing, you can change the image from full color to outline, grayscale, or silhouette. If you're using one of the objects from VideoScribe's image library, you can set it to outline and change the color of the stroke. This is great when using text elements like circles, underlines, and arrows. Moving on, instead of the text alignment button, there's a button to flip your image both vertically and horizontally. The other menus are the same though. You can still add blur, glow, drop shadow, and all that jazz. The move effect can also be applied to images, and you can change the type of hand that's used as well. One effect that can only be applied to images is the morph effect. Essentially, it takes the lines from one image and attempts to create a new image with those lines. It's an interesting effect, and we'll talk about it later in its own video. So that's it for the different properties windows. The level of customization in VideoScribe can seem overwhelming at times, but just remember that you don't have to mess with anything unless you really think that it'll improve your video. Don't add effects just for the sake of adding effects. In the next video, we'll talk about the audio and voiceover options in VideoScribe, what you need to be careful about, and the best workflow when working with a voiceover. Stay tuned.